please.
Yeah, all set.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Capital Subcommittee meeting. We have a big agenda today, and we're going to actually postpone the minutes because we just got the second group now. So we'll do both minutes because we have them at the next meeting. And we have two new members now on our committee because Nancy has resigned from the school committee. So we have Suzanne, who graciously agreed to be on, and David Perlman. Okay.
Helen, you don't want to do the minutes? Because I did read them if you read them.
Both of them?
Yeah.
I haven't. I read one, but I didn't read the other. So I'd rather just put them both together.
Okay.
Okay. But our first item on the agenda is Bill Smith, who's going to be talking about the Davis Path footbridge and a possible grant opportunity, and looking at getting support from the school committee for this. So Bill, why don't you take it away?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Bill Smith. I'm an architect and the project manager within DPW for the Davis Path Footbridge Replacement Project. And let me share my screen.
You have sharing
with you. I should.
Yep.
And if we can all see the screen, I'm going to take us back to 1911 when the town did a significant taking in which they took what was then called the Walnut Path Extension, today's Davis Path, between White Place over the then Boston and Albany Railroad tracks, today's MBTA Green Line D branch, beside today's Boylston Street Playground. Then it was the Boylston School, and that continued in this second image across Boylston Street and connected with the historic Walnut Path, which is adjacent to Lincoln School. The subject really, and one of the primary reasons for the Davis Path footbridge. So let me move to our next slide. Then in that same year, 1911, the town the town engineer actually designed, and they built in that next year a reinforced concrete bridge above the Boston and Albany Railroad. That bridge here in a 1936 photograph taken from the Boylston Playground, or then the Boylston School side, shows the bridge. And then in 1921, we undertook a significant structural evaluation of the bridge, having lost different pieces of it into the MBTA right-of-way. And what was determined, there was deterioration in the reinforcing rods at the primary girders, and the main span was structurally unsafe. And in an emergency operation that same year, the span was removed between abutments above the MBTA operating green line. So we were left with a void and a significant loss of connectivity to the neighborhood and to the town. So DPW put out we wrote an RFP and issued that, and we got a number of very strong responses, and the team selected included the primary structural bridge engineering firm of WSP, coupled with the bridge architectural and planning team of UIL, or Urban Idea Lab. Then this past year, we undertook the concept design of the bridge replacement, together with an appointed design review committee that was formed of 9 stakeholder boards and commission members from the Transportation Board, Preservation, Park and Rec, but also 3 neighborhood constituents from either side. So I really want to focus on the accessibility and connectivity facets of this new design. And you see here, this is an aerial view from the Boylston Street perspective. And you see that we're going in an accessible manner. This is a walkway actually up to and above the new bridge at the Green Line. And then at the same time, what isn't available today as an accessible means to the Boylston Street playground. And that's proposed also from Boylston Street. And that would be down this walkway to the playground area. We're also providing steps for more immediate access from both the bridge and Boylston Street. The structure
Bill,
is,
can I just ask one
of
question on the
course,
previous?
yep.
Is there also, am I seeing correctly, like built-in new stadium seating on the?
It's very limited. These are steps, and it is a walkway, so it doesn't require handrails, but guardrails per se, it's less than 5%. So what we have are just a couple tiers of seating at ground level.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And it's largely what would be cast in place concrete. And there are a number of screens that are proposed. The handrails and the screens would be largely of wood, an epay, and then the handrails are very transparent. They're a stainless steel and post and cable design. Unlike the original bridge, which is quite heavy and massive, and I think we got a sense that there was a lack of security in that, you know, there were a position where you couldn't see what was going on the bridge or the stairs. So let me advance then from the White Place side. That was the Boylston Street side. We again have a stair connection. But in this case, we were unable to provide any ramp or walkway because of the constrained physical area, and we will have a full elevator at that side. The elevator, though, will be glass, both a glass enclosure and a glass cab.
Mm-hmm.
Then this is the aerial view of that, taken from just above the Boylston Street playground. Boylston Street being to the right, the hotel at the background, the MBTA Green Line, White Place at this side. These are the screens. This is largely concrete. It's a textured surface, which means the forms have a texture, a pre-designed texture on them.
Where's the wood?
Oh, sure. Any sort of screening which is allows light and air to pass through is proposed, for example, here, but we don't want people to pass through for security or other reasons. So these are proposed at the bridge abutments and surrounding the new bridge abutments. So for example, you can see a sense of them here and here. Whereas this would be more solid because of the structural demands, and really we'd be looking at foundation level pieces.
Okay.
Then the conceptual cost estimate came in at about $9 million. A good deal of that will be MBTA coordination and protection, which I think the school committee is probably rather familiar with.
Unfortunately.
Then we have been looking, of course, for outside funding, and a federal US DOT program that was initiated this past year and significantly expanded with the new recovery bill, and that is what's called the Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods program, which can fund up to for capital construction grants can fund up to 80% of the cost, which would be a significant portion, the remaining needing to be picked up either by in a match or state or other grants. So that is what we're applying for currently. The deadline is September 28th for submission. And what I've been doing is going around to different boards and commissions who are significant stakeholders or potential users of the footbridge, and asking for letters of support, which we feel help to strengthen this application. I know that there is concern about use of Davis Path, for example, or rather, let's say Boylston Street Playground, while the Lincoln School is active, in particular when the Lincoln School will be the swing school for the Pierce School project, which my understanding is that the Pierce School project is currently programmed for 24 and through 26 construction.
27.
Oh, 27. All right. So what with this grant, should we be successful with the grant and come up with the successful match, which is, we do have something carried in the capital program. What we're proposing is we would have a start date somewhere in 2026, freeing up for full use of the Boylston Street Playground, at least the first 2 years is what we think of the swing school use for Pierce. And if we were successful this year, we'd go into final design and then put out for construction. We need to obligate our funds by, I think, fiscal year 20 or in 2026. So that's where we're proposing, and I know the commissioner had spoken about this, a starting date of June 30th, 2026, after which obviously we have a year or so during which we both need to share the space. And the proposal is that we would use half of the space, basically a portion of the field, and that would be fenced off for the construction of Davis Path and the footbridge. Park access would remain at the now signalized crossing on Boylston Street. And of course, there's park access from Leverett and Cameron. Right now, there is an existing maintenance path. This is how DPW vehicles access the playground for maintenance. We wouldn't need this 24/7. It would basically be needed at the beginning and end of each workday and for limited times when there are material deliveries or otherwise. And during those times, we could cordon off and make safe and have a detail or in order to allow for those deliveries through the access gate. So I think that our sense is that there can be a viable and acceptable shared solution.
Okay.
I welcome any questions.
Yeah, I think that's
I
what
wanted to give just a brief overview without consuming too much of your
Sure. No,
time.
and we appreciate you coming and giving this overview. I guess I'll open it up to questions from the committee. I have some too, but I can wait. Suzanne.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. Thank you, Bill. Could you just, I'm looking at this picture, and
Mhm.
where is the access to the sidewalk on Route 9? Is it?
Oh, sorry.
I don't think we actually have that picture. Oh,
Right
right
there.
there.
Right there.
And
So this is Route 9, where I have my cursor pointing,
okay.
and this is the sidewalk
It's
on
right
Route
there.
9. This is the
Okay.
hotel.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that.
And so this would be the accessible walkway leading up and over the
Yeah,
green
I got all
line.
that. So
and this is down.
I'm thinking,
ahead.
how do the pedestrians then get across Route 9? They have to walk down to
Oh,
the, to the,
Yeah, at this
sig-
point, they need to walk down to what is now the signalized crossing at what will remain an entry. But that
Yeah,
current
that's
entry is not accessible
the current, okay.
To the park.
to the park. Yeah, sorry.
Park. So,
We don't have, as a part of this plan, we show a conceptual crossing aligned with Davis Path, but it's not a part of this project. We've
right, no,
limited.
Where it is now is much better for the school than over by
Right.
where the path is.
But I know that the Boylston Street Corridor Committee has studied that length of Boylston Street and come up with some solutions that might even provide a length of crossing or two crossings.
okay. I would just imagine a lot of people coming across, if they're going across Route 9, would try to do it right there. So
Well,
I
I mean,
would-
this is very much like it was, you know,
Yeah.
when the bridge was intact and Davis Path, you just had a set of stairs coming up,
Right,
and you either had to go to the east or west in order to cross.
yeah, okay,
So that doesn't change with this project, but I think it sets us up for what might be a stronger argument for a crossing
right.
better
Okay,
aligned in future.
right. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Helen.
Okay, you're welcome. Mariah.
Thanks. I have two questions.
Sure.
Thank you, Bill, for the presentation. It was really great.
Oh, of course.
My questions are, first one, is the $9 million, what is that in present dollars or in the dollars of the year in which the project is projected?
It is in present dollars, 2023 dollars, the year in which we're going for funding. And we have talked about whether we escalate that. So there's a significant contingency, but whether we go ahead and escalate that for the application.
Where is the contingency represented in these costs? Or did you just equally apply it? And how much is your contingency?
Yeah, I think we had a 5%. You know, it doesn't show up in this. I think this
Okay.
is just equally applying that in
The
all of its
contingency.
facets.
Okay. And then my next question is, I'll preface it with a comment. My big concern is that the playground is already a very tight space, and
Right.
Pierce obviously will be a full house using Old Lincoln. And so the concern is obviously about the student needs for outdoor space while they're at Old Lincoln. And so my question is, do you actually need half the space? Like, how can we
My sense is this is
minimize the
conservative.
footprint? Well, that's worse than well, I guess conservative meaning it's more space than you might need.
Where I've drawn this line and the extent required, we'd need to define, but really negotiate with the contractor at the time once we devise means and methods. But this is more than adequate for what we would need for materials, parking, and operations. There'd be a site office.
I see. Well, I think it would be really important. I am, of course, I am supportive of this personally. I think it needs to be done for all the different reasons we can all imagine. And the timing is, if you get it on the first round, is
Right.
exquisitely inconvenient. And so how do we minimize the impact on students and staff will just be really important.
Yeah, no, we're super cognizant of minimizing what would be the work site and where this fence would be constructed, and that, you know, it might fluctuate at different times depending what the activity is, and we would definitely seek to minimize that, even strive if possible, which is tough in this area, if we could find off-site but nearby parking.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
that could be, sometimes the hotels I know further up, which would be asking a lot of the contractors because they carry tools with them and equipment. But oftentimes we can negotiate something with adjacent hotels with surplus parking.
The hotels, U-Haul, maybe there's a.
Yeah, I think there are some opportunities, and that will allow us to constrict that site further.
Because you should be aware that the schools have parking for teachers on, I think Route 9 is one of the areas too.
Well,
I know
that's
on
why I
Walton
was thinking, using on-street parking is probably, in this area, is probably a stretch. It's already perhaps
Yes,
taken by teachers and or the residential needs.
right. Suzanne,
Yeah, I'm just, two things, quick things. One is, I'm just wondering if the hotel has any involvement. Was that part of the deal when they got permission to build the hotel?
Not for the bridge. They
Yeah, okay,
did rebuild part of Davis Path, a retaining wall, and the landscape for which they are responsible.
okay.
But if we're changing that, of course, that changes some of the parameters of that agreement.
Right. And then the other, Helen, I think for the Lincoln School, they have like a blacktop.
Yeah.
Over for one, on one side, and what do they, and they have something on the other side, do they? On the same side of the of Route 9 that the building's on?
yes, so there are
So-
two spaces. There's a rather large size blacktop, probably almost this, not the size of the construction site, but a little smaller, which has some tables, and we'll probably have a Connect 4 type of thing, and maybe even a Gaga pit. And then there's the other side that has usually the garden that the schools have, and then there's a hillside that kids can play on. It has a lot of pudding stones, so it's not feasible to make it flat, but it can be a play area. So there are those. We still need the park, and I think what I know to be true is that whenever there's something that involves both the park and the schools, we work together. This is a collaborative process of making sure that we can, to the best of our abilities, satisfy the needs of both sides. I think they'll make their lay down space smaller so we get a little more park. But the other piece, as Mariah very wisely put forth, it's not clear we'll get this on the first round, so it may be a moot point. And that's sort of where my thought is, that we should support this. It's certainly money for the town, money to get something built that needs to be built, that the town is determined needs to be built. And so let's at least try and see. With construction, as we all know, things get delayed. And I think we should my suggestion would be that we recommend to the full school committee to support this. Any other thoughts here?
I'll second that.
Okay. I'll do any other discussion? Okay. So roll call vote. Suzanne?
Yes.
And David? Are you with us?
Yeah.
Great. And Mariah?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Bill, thank
Oh,
you. Thank you.
thank
for
you.
Time for coming. We will
Of course.
give this to the full school committee tomorrow.
Okay.
And I think you had a sample letter that you'll send to.
Right. I have the template, which I can send to Betsy.
Maybe filled out with appropriate stuff, or will she be able to?
Yeah, send it to me, Bill. I'll be able to
Okay.
speak
And
it for us. Thank you.
Helen, if at the full committee you wanted this presentation, for example, this image that includes whatever images you wanted, I can send this as a PDF.
David, what is your thought?
Well, why don't you send it to me, Bill, anyway? That way I'll have it.
Absolutely.
If we
And
want to
then
bring
you-
it up, yeah, if we want to bring it up tomorrow night, I'll have it handy, okay?
Just
Absolutely.
one
Yes,
suggestion.
I think we could bring it up tomorrow night, and that would help expedite this process.
All right, great.
Bill, just one suggestion, in looking at those
Sure.
old pictures, there were beautiful lights that lit it up.
Oh, I know exactly. These,
those.
they were at either side. You
Yeah,
see them,
there
yeah.
will be lighting on this bridge.
There will be
'Cause
lighting,
it doesn't show in the
absolutely.
plans. Okay.
It doesn't show on the plans because they're actually going to be down lighting, surface lighting,
Oh, okay, good. So it doesn't affect
and
the neighbors and
LED.
yeah,
Yeah, which the MBTA gets concerned about uh, the stanchions
sure.
or too much lighting. But yeah, that's the sort of lighting that's planned for the bridge and the paths. And the park will, whose reconstruction will follow this at some point. There is money in the capital program,
Yes.
but that will include lighting as well.
Okay. All
So-
right, great. Thank you, Bill, for joining us.
Oh, thank you. All right.
And we'll move on to our next
All
item.
right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, and thanks for your support.
You're welcome. The next item is the CIP. And Mariah, I'm gonna, or Betsy, who's going to pull it up?
I thought the next thing was the vote on the 250 or whatever it is. The
I'm
vote
sorry.
on reusing the prior year funds.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Thank you. Thank you for keeping me honest here. Okay, it's not prior year, it's this year's.
Yeah, sorry, this year.
It's this year's funding. Yeah, so in talking with Charlie Simmons, who's here with us, thank you, Charlie. We were able to accomplish quite a bit this summer, which hopefully, Charlie, I didn't call you yet to ask you, but you know how you do your presentation once a year about what summer work is? I like the style. So I think, Betsy, we were talking for which meeting of the school committee?
October 12th. I can follow up with you directly, Charlie, but looks like October 12th we will.
If that works for you, to do that so that people can see all the great work that happened this summer with the money that was allocated by the CIP, the mini CIP. But after completing, I think, almost all of the work, correct? There's approximately 250,000. I'm not sure if you want a number, Charlie, or if you want just direction.
Actually, if I
whatever
could share the screen, I could give you the most
Sure.
up-to-date budget.
Sure, that would be great. So what we're talking about here is trying to use this money to bring the Baldwin School up to usable condition. Not great, but usable condition for the staff and meetings and teaching that we need to do for teachers at the Baldwin. So, yes.
So I would update that number from 250 to 300,000 because we are getting more bills in. The actual numbers, well, 329 that we have right now is a surplus, but I'd still like to wait a little bit because some of it was time and materials.
Mm-hmm.
And most of this work has been completed and 2/3 of it has been billed. So, but yes, we've got, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 more windows to put shades up at Lincoln. There's some stuff to do in the gymnasium, in the auditorium at Lincoln. And I'm getting this from Karen. That'll be in October and November on lights and sound system. But overall, everything was completed before school started. So
And I'm really excited for everybody to be able to see it. Both.
I do have some pictures too, if you'd like to see a few of them.
Do you want to preview to now? Okay.
Yeah, why not?
All right. Good.
Actually,
Go for it.
Sarah put this together. Let's see if I can get this started here.
You might need to take down what you're currently showing,
That's a good idea.
stop sharing, and then start sharing again.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, get out of there. Or new share? Okay.
It took a teamwork of both Sarah and
There we
Charlie
go.
and Karen King working all summer to make this happen. And it really, I'm really grateful for all of your hard work. Karen, you really did an amazing job keeping
She
on
did.
top of this. And Sarah just as well. And Charlie, you too, but
I don't do anything anyway.
they did
They
the,
did it all. So Sarah was nice enough to be able to put this together so we'd have something to talk about, but this is the auditorium before and after. And you can see the change in the color and obviously the new chairs with the new fabric. And
they're not new chairs. They're the chairs
I'm
that
sorry,
were
new
there.
chair, just fabric. Yes, your reupholstered.
The stage was redone, you know, it really is freshened up in many ways. The lighting in the back, we had to put in, there was one broken, so you had to put in some new ones. So it really is now usable probably for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay, and do you have also,
So this is some work we did in the classroom. Old to the left and new to the right, to new flooring and included carpeting in this small area, usually of linoleum, and the all new painting.
and they also, as we were looking at it, the unit ventilators in each room were really banged up. And the painter did an amazing job of refreshing them so
He
that they
did.
look decent, you know? And new lockers.
Yeah, as we did our walkthrough, we discovered these lockers were original, going back 30 years, and they were pretty tough shape. So we were able to get new ones. Came in at the last second. There were some pieces are missing, but they look much better, very clean.
The other thing that was done is all the woodwork, and there's quite a bit of woodwork at the new Lincoln, was all sanded and refinished.
Mhm.
And really makes it look much nicer. It was in tough shape.
It was tired. Very
Yep.
tired.
Well, the whole first floor was tired.
This is a shot of the main office, just finished with painting and flooring, and so
It looked much better.
Miss Jennings, the knee wall's been put back and new furniture and everything looks great. They're very happy over there on that. This is the music room. And new painting and new flooring. We kept the picture here.
Yeah, the painter was
Awesome.
very good at making sure that
That did get
remained.
painted. So this was very tired and they had area rugs to try and help with the noise. So it's worked out pretty good. It's
Are those carpet squares, Charlie, that they put down?
yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Shifting ahead to the Baker School. So-
Charlie, can I just ask one question on the
Oh, yeah.
carpet squares? Do you buy extra, or how do you know that you'll have them if you need to swap them out?
Well, we buy a few extra ones. You can actually take these up if they get dirty, and you can clean them in a sink.
Oh, wow.
Actually, you can put bleach on them, and they will not turn white. So if you had a few of them that got damaged, even the custodian could pick up 4 or 5 of them, replace them with the new ones, and clean up the old ones. And we've done that in the past.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. So I have not done any major work in the Baker Auditorium since I've been here. The seating was all fixed going back to the 1930s. The seating was all removed and the floor.
Can I
all
just
sanded.
interrupt you for a minute with the seating?
Yeah.
So thanks to Nancy Ray Gore, all this seating was repurposed. There was a company that came and took it away. We didn't have to pay for disposal, and they are being reused, or they will be reusing them somewhere.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And
No, go back. There was more there.
that's all I have. We just.
No, go to the auditorium there, because I think it's important for the committee to see that auditorium at Baker.
Well, the problem is I don't have a finished auditorium with this.
Oh, okay. Then we
patch.
can wait.
We didn't, like I said, we were just putting it together quick for.
Yeah, but you can see just in this little bit how the floor, once they sanded it, looked
Yeah.
fantastic. You
Ah.
know?
Was that a new floor?
No,
No,
Oh, it's not a new floor.
it's not a new floor. It's a sanded floor. You can
Oh,
see the
okay.
one part that's not sanded there.
Gotcha.
So nice to have it without the bolted down chairs too, to give so much more flexibility to the space.
They're thrilled. They're thrilled with what,
So-
and then we did some other things in there too, by the sound system, and there'll be shades instead of the drapes, so that they can go up and down, and you'll have more light in the room. And Charlie will bring the finished project. to
Well,
the-
we'll put it all together and make it nice, but you can see the color too. It's been changed. This is the style of it. It looks actually very, very nice.
A question I have regarding the Lincoln seating, was that the first time the Lincoln chairs have been upgraded in some way
They haven't been upgraded. They were just reupholstered.
or reupholstered? So is that the first time they've been reupholstered? Were those
Yes.
original Lincoln
Yes.
chairs?
Yes,
Were.
All the foam on the seats also had to be replaced. It was quite degraded, so they had to replace all the foam as well.
we did that at the high school in '97, when we redid the auditorium. We did the same thing. We kept the chairs because they don't make the chairs as well. The high school ones were even in better condition than Lincoln. Lincoln was plastic. The high school were metal chairs that we were able to reupholster and reuse. So let's go
So,
back. Mhm.
So at this point, conservatively, you could use the $300,000 balance for anything you want. And as Mariah was mentioning, we talked about doing some work at Baldwin. And I think that would be a good idea to get started on it. The Baldwin does need a lot of work, and this would be a great opportunity to get started. I can work over the winter on it. And one of the uses would be to have some of the people out of 2 Clark Road go there, which their lease at 2 Clark Road is ending on June 30th. So
Correct.
Do we have kind of a master plan for the Baldwin? What the rooms will look like, or who's gonna, be where?
we are meeting Helen and Karen and Sarah and I and Susan are meeting there tomorrow. My estimate is let me stop sharing for 1 second here. My estimate to do the work at the Baldwin is somewhere in this vicinity of around 580,000, and Susan wanted to add another 50,000 for walls. So we're gonna have to prioritize, and it was discussion between Mariah, Susan and I and Sarah, that we do some work this year and then we do some work next year and put a request into the CIP and see how that goes. And that we might add walls next year, or we might do something a little different. We might end up agreeing that we're going to do a little bit of painting, a little bit of flooring, just to get people in there. The bathrooms are very tired. They really need a lot of work. So
But it doesn't have a good path, flow through. I mean, it's you go through that little kitchen area, and to get to the other side of that, I know
Yeah.
it's kind of a mess, really. So
it's all original, yeah. And,
yeah, no, well, no, it's not original. I think they kept
Some of
chopping
it-
it up afterwards, right?
Some of it was redone.
some of it in the front was chopped in half, and you still went through the kitchen, and then I know I built a wall halfway down, and then I think a beat program was in there, and that was a while ago, and the children's daycare for the school teachers were there for many, many years, and obviously the Winthrop House was there for close to
Right.
30 years, so.
Charlie,
I think what Suzanne may have been alluding to is that it would be helpful to lay out what exactly the plan is for Baldwin. I understand there's going to be an upcoming meeting to discuss that, but I think it would be helpful for this subcommittee and for the community at large to be able to see specifically what the goals are for each space and whether that makes sense for the programming that we foresee there.
I think there's a short-term use, and then there's the long-term plan. And we're going to get into a crunch if we don't do the short-term plan. And one of the pieces of that is also I think we already put together a proposal for a grant for an elevator, an ULA.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were away, Helen. I had to pull the plug on that because unfortunately, the way it was written, we would have to do all the work, including getting the billing before June 30th. And that's not going to happen. It's going to take at least 6, maybe 7 months just to get the Lula. So I asked about being able to extend it. I was told there was a possibility, but looking into it further, you can't extend it. It's based on reimbursement. So if the work went over and say it was only $5,000, I could find money for that. But if the work went over and it was $150,000, the whole project was estimated to be $250,000. I can't find $150,000 on June 29th to pay for it. So put the brakes on it. And I had to pull back on it.
Oh, okay.
I know it's unfortunate, but
Yeah, that truly is. I was
Yeah.
looking, I was hoping that would be
Hmm.
the case. I mean, the building is accessible on each floor. It's just that you have to go outside to get to
go
the
back in.
floor. Mariah,
I was just gonna comment in response to David's question, Suzanne's question, that for the money that we're talking about, what we had discussed in that smaller group was funding some of the building subsystem work that needs to get done independent of the actual final layout. So things like the electrical and the plumbing and the HVAC, all that sort of subsystem stuff. So the final design that you're asking about isn't coming out of this money anyway.
All right, thank you for that. That's helpful because one of my worries was we spend this money and then a year later we decide that's not how we want to use the space, and then we're essentially spending money twice for
Right.
opposite purposes.
Yeah, it's not that. We looked at the different things within the budget Charlie had talked about and picked out about $300,000 of the subsystem work. So that ties to that, this particular vote that we're being asked to take today.
Suzanne, sorry.
But did we do a feasibility study on Baldwin or no? We talked about it. So-
No, we didn't get the money for it. We had put in for the CIP this year to get 75,000 for a feasibility study. We didn't get the money.
Is that necessary, do you think? Would that come out of the 300,000 or no?
Well, I think that with Charlie's knowledge, Karen's knowledge, you know, I think that what the pieces that we're doing is sort of basic. That doesn't, in the feasibility study would be more in terms of, you know, what our plans are for use for this building for the next 50 years. And I think what we're trying to do is make this building habitable for the next 5 years, so that once we get the master plan together and do all that, we'll be able to then do a real feasibility study. Does that make sense, Suzanne?
Well, no, I still feel like we need some kind of a plan to.
But there will be a plan for
Yeah.
what they're gonna do for the next, like, they're gonna do the design starting with their meeting tomorrow of how this
Okay.
building is gonna be rejiggered inside to be functional. But we're
We
sort of
know.
running against the wall of Clark Road leases ending. So there's
Right, so
not,
that's,
there
no, I
isn't that
understand that.
opportunity, right? We have people have to go somewhere in June. So
And not everybody's going to be going to Clark Road. I mean, to Baldwin. Some will be going to some of the schools and to offices in the schools, so that's being worked out.
Is the bulk of the money would be going to subsystems? How does that in and of itself make Baldwin habitable for staff
Well,
moving over to Clark
bathrooms,
Road?
if you have to have decent bathrooms that work. You have to have an electrical system that provides the power for the computers and things like that.
air
Oh.
handling.
Air handling systems to make it, so those are the basics types of things.
I just, again, I
We're
think.
not putting, I think what
mess.
I would like to help or to explain is, well, you're not putting good money after bad. This will be useful no matter what we do with it.
Right, I mean, I understand, I mean, the bathrooms are ancient, and are they in the best location? I mean.
This
some of
wasn't
the-
bathrooms. We talked about hot
Oh.
water heater, air. Helen said bathrooms, but that wasn't what we put in the 300. What we put
Oh, you
were,
didn't put the bathrooms in?
no, we put electrical upgrade. I'm just looking at the notes from the other day, heat pumps, the air recovery units and the hot water heater. Those were the So it's like the HVAC, the hot water, and the electrical. It's all
Can we sneak the bathrooms
non-specific.
in? The bathrooms are
Yeah, the
pretty bad.
bathrooms are gonna have to
Well,
be.
but
done
that's gonna
because-
be in that, that's not in the, that's not budget. We're talking about just right now the reuse of what's in the current year budget. And then
And
the
there may
rest of
be
that we're
more.
requesting.
If there's more money from the current use budget, then we,
The
that's.
project is split into 2 years, though. We're talking about the current year funding and then what we're requesting for starting July 1. That'll be
Right.
in our next chunk of our
Right,
conversation.
but we're trying to get it ready for.
Right,
some
but this stuff needs to
people.
happen anyway, and that way Charlie has what he needs to go ahead and start talking to contractors and whoever and lining up their work for the winter. So he can move ahead with that money and all this basic work while the rest of this more refined use design planning happens, and then that can get deployed afterwards.
Approximately what fraction of the 300,000 plus is for a subsystem?
100%.
Okay.
Mm.
So in terms of redistributing the space for office use, we're not really attributing much cost to that.
Well, there's the moving and then there's that will be part of it. Susan, do you want to say something?
I would. Thank
Okay.
you. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties. I got kicked out and couldn't get back in, but
I'm
anyways.
sorry.
Yeah, no, it wasn't you. I've been having troubles with my computer. But anyways, yeah, I did want to say that all of the work that we're putting forth out of that 300,000 needs to be done before any of the other work could be done. So I think you've kind of said that, but I just want to make sure it's clear that you can't do any of the other work until this work's done. So our thinking was just, let's get what we can get done now. So as we develop the plan, we'll have that underway. And any issues that are uncovered or unearthed could then help us to be able to put together a better plan when we're actually dividing it into potential office space and learning spaces that we would use for the learning center component of what that area would be designed to support. So we're just trying to really be intentional and also understand that, we have to do some work here. We also have to do some work over at Newbury and also at Old Lincoln in order to get ready for those other moves. And as much as we can take care of some of that now, will help us to be able to have a more smooth and orderly transition to some of the other moves we have to make and buy us just a little bit more time until Len starts. Len will be with us starting October 2nd, and we wanted him to be actively involved in some of the conversations around how to divide up that space. So that was kind of additional information about our thinking as we were contemplating, how do we accomplish all that we need to, given that there's just really such a short ramp, for all this work to be done.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is propose a motion that we use any funding that's left over from the mini CIP to work on the Baldwin School to make it ready for staff to be able to go in there.
Second. I would
Okay.
just mod a friendly amendment for
Sure.
future uses, including staff and
Thank you.
learning and whatever
I was-
else.
As
Yeah.
I was saying it, I thought I wanted to change that. Thank you. Did you get that, Betsy?
Yes, I did. Yep.
Excellent. Okay, so I'll take a vote. Mariah,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yeah, I'm voting yes, but I still want to push for, the overall kind of plan, even starting July 1. I just feel like we're not thinking all of this through. I'm not against starting the work that needs to be done, but July 1 will come pretty quickly, and I feel like that we need to start figuring that out. But I do vote yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
And David,
Yes.
great.
Helen, you
Okay.
need to vote.
And
too.
I vote yes. And the chair votes yes. Okay. Now I think we're moving on to the CIP, correct? Mariah, you have it up there in front of
Yeah.
you? Okay. Let's do that. So this is, let's just put a framework around this. What we're looking at now is what we will be submitting to Melissa and the town for our CIP request for fiscal year 25 through 30. And we do this every year. I think it goes, when does, Charlie, when does Melissa need it by?
By the end of the week, but, and I have my hearings on Monday, but I'm not gonna be available for it. And I usually, frankly, I do it a little late because it's a little bit busy the last few weeks getting school. open.
Sure.
I have other priorities right now.
Absolutely.
Um,
That our
We
CIP.
still don't, we never get the final CIP until like, I don't know, February, March these days, so we have a
That's-
little bit of time anyway.
I
But
think, you're-
I think the lion's share of it is here. We had a really productive meeting the other day.
uh-huh.
And it's just some tweaking that I have to do. And then I'll help load it onto the system so that Melissa can see it. And then I have other stuff I have to do for the town as well. So within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Great. I don't know if Susan, Charlie, Mariah, who wants to go through this? Or shall I?
I can go through it if you want, or whatever makes sense. I'd
Yeah.
also, it probably makes sense, Betsy, I have a better view of it. This one, something went
thank
wrong
you.
with this one. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not looking right. I think it got messed up in the export from Google. Something went wrong. Helen, do you want me, or I don't know, does
Sure.
Susan want to talk, or Charlie, whoever wants to?
I'll jump in if it's specifically to me, and if it's for
Okay.
school, you guys can talk about it.
Let me pull this up.
Either way, we were all there, so, yeah.
Yes.
Great collaboration. So I feel really good
So-
about what we're putting forth.
Can you see the document? Did it come through?
Yes.
Okay, so this spreadsheet continues the practice we started, I think, last year of having the 6-year CIP. And then to match what Melissa does, I put in an FY24 column just so we could have the previous year comparison. So it's chunked into 3 sections. The first one is what PSB requests. And you can see the projects here and the subtotals by year and total over that 7-year period. Then there's the DPW request for playgrounds. And again, you can see the by year total and the total for the 7 years. And then there's building department. And I'll just go quickly to show you, but for everything that's being requested in the PSB section, there is narrative detail following. So for example, the school's classroom capacity refers to this. The next one is failing furnitures, that's there, and so on and so forth. So there's a narrative accompanying this. And I would mention that specifically that there are 2 new line items that came out of our conversation the other day between Susan, Sarah, Charlie, and I. One was the IEP accommodations line item, which didn't exist in prior years, but it was identified as a need. And it also is part of our conversations that we've been having about building accommodations and grounds accommodations. So that was included in 50,000 per year starting for next year. And then the other item came out of is this Lawrence Cafeteria Expansion Feasibility Study, and that came out of the principal's request because the building capacity is the classroom capacity of the building is out of line and much larger than the cafeteria capacity can bear.
Mariah, this
Yeah.
is Stephen. What's that? Is that 50,000 just a plug figure? Is it based on anything in
These are
particular?
estimates from Charlie and Sarah on what is reasonable for these line items. So
It may be less than that
Yeah.
for just the feasibility study because
And I
Yeah.
would say that there's a note here that says out year amounts are provided as estimates. So
Okay,
So
thanks.
just for people who are not aware, IEP accommodations have to do with students with individual education plans. And sometimes in those plans, there may be the need for air conditioning, there may be the need for some sort of playground equipment. There could be varying needs that come up that are CIP related type of things. So I think it's a good idea to have that amount of money there.
and it complements what Charlie has in the ADA renovations, which
Correct.
are specifically related to doors or other, there's a whole bunch of stuff, right,
Exteriors,
Charlie, that is
mostly
explicit.
exteriors.
Yeah, yeah, ramps and so forth. So, but these are complementary but distinct from each other. And then the other big area that I would mention is that if people recall, so we were just talking about the $1 million that that Charlie had spent in this past FY24, or we'd spent a little bit less than the $1 million in the balance. And last year, if you recall, we had 17 million, I think, total in this deferred maintenance. But one really great thing that happened over the past couple of months was that there was a lot of reconciliation of what was in that list between what had been done in prior years and just hadn't been marked completed on the list. And what were some projects that possibly needed a little bit more clarification. And so we left them in, but didn't put a dollar amount associated with them right now. That's gone to $8.3 million over the next 6 years. And one other nice thing that happened in the process of looking at this was that the projects that you see, or the dollar amounts that you see here, reflect sort of planned projects. So for example, like you just heard from Charlie, this past year was about the first floor of Lincoln, and there'll be some ongoing work there. And so there's real planned work that really ties together during each year of this deferred maintenance program right now. So I think that's all. Oh, the other one thing I wanted to mention is last year we had voted 2.6 million in our last year of the, which because our last year was 29 last year. And this year there's a TBD placeholder in FY30 for a Baker School construction. So there's the feasibility study in 29 and TBD in FY30, but it's a new line item.
And as everybody knows, Baker is our next school that will need to be renovated addition, where, you know, obviously the feasibility study would tell us what that is. I'll just go through a little bit of the DPW, and this is a complicated one with the playgrounds, because as everybody knows, DPW does the playgrounds, they take care of them. On the other hand, there are school playgrounds, except for Lawrence, which is a town playground that we use for the schools also. And the amounts for the playgrounds, Lincoln School is the original playground right now, still out there, and needs a definite renovation, along with Heath, which I think got a minor renovation when we did the addition, but very little. So those are the two top playgrounds that need work on them, and unfortunately they keep on getting pushed back. They've been in the CIP, I would say, probably for the last 5 years minimum, maybe more, and they keep on getting pushed back. So it's something that we need to work together with DPW and Melissa to at least get one of them done in the next couple years. So that's that piece. Susan, do you want to say something about these? I see your hand up.
Yes, I was just going to make a comment about some of the other things we took into consideration as we were trying to make sense of some of the line items in the prior year lists. And so you'll see an increase up to $200,000 on the furniture and fixtures, because one of the things that we noticed that at each school they would have things such as whiteboard replacements, and we thought that that really belonged under furniture and fixtures. So we kind of took these items that were spread out across schools and consolidated them so that we'd have a better definition of when we're asking for furniture and fixtures, exactly what we're asking funding for. So as Mariah mentioned, part of the money in the 200,000 includes cafeteria tables, in addition to some standard furniture that we would need to replace every year, as well as whiteboards. So I just wanted to point out that, you know, may look in some cases like things have gone down and other things have gone up, but we did do a little bit of regrouping and defining so that we'd all have a common understanding about, you know, what we're asking for and why. So.
Right. And one of the things that we do when we have a new project, we always get new furniture, new whiteboards, new everything is new in that building so that it will last for a number of years, and we don't have to use this funding to do any of that kind of thing. It's been a good way. MSBA participates in it, and then the furniture that we do have from that particular building, for instance, the Pierce School library shelves presently are fairly new, maybe 3 or 4 years old. Once Pierce moves out, Lincoln School will get those shelves because they are in need of new shelving. Obviously, once more, their library is 30 years old, and the shelving is that old. So we try the best we can, and I'm just going through this so that people can understand our process, for those who may not know, to reuse what we have that's good, and access new stuff for the new buildings as appropriate. Charlie, do you want to go over the buildings part of the request, the CIP request? Because the reason we're doing this way, just so people know, in the CIP book, the buildings requests are under the schools. It's part of the school request, and I think the DPW one too is part of the school request.
DPW is not.
It's
But
not,
the building,
sorry.
but building, these line items for buildings are, yeah.
Thank you. And maybe Charlie, Suzanne, do you want to ask a question about the top of the line?
Yeah, I actually, Helen, I did. I just wonder if you could talk about classroom capacity. I know that we're gonna.
Oh, yeah, thank you for
Gonna
that.
lose Clock Road, but what are we keeping? And is it, we anticipate that's where it's gonna play out?
So the
or-
I
plan
just
is-
realized too, just one comment, there's a typo in here. Because FY29 look Helen is actually escalating. I forgot to remove.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, there's a typo because FY29, as you go through that, this number's wrong.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Good. It's less. So
Yes,
that's
it's less. It's less. Sorry. Keep going. I just realized that though. Yeah.
So the plan presently is we will give up the lease when it expires now for the Clark Road. The classes, the three of the BEEP classes are already in place at Driscoll this year, and we'll move over with the rest of the school. And the other BEEP classes will be distributed at the end of June to other schools where there may be capacity to have them. I'm not sure if that's been decided exactly yet, but that's what will happen. And the staff would go to some of the schools where there is space and to Baldwin. The plan is to maintain the Temple Emeth and the Temple Ove Shalom spaces that we are renting presently. And that would be in FY25 at 640,000. They're much less expensive than the $1 million plus that we're spending at Clark Road. We would keep the Beacon Street one until Pierce School opens, because there will be 3 new BEEP classes at Pierce. And we would then be able to divide up the Beacon Street one to Pierce and to some of the other schools. So that's why, but these numbers do not reflect smaller Beacon Street number at this time. I think we're sort of waiting to see how things work out and to make sure that this can work for us. In terms of Temple Emeth, that South Brookline does not have space. Hopefully, once Baker School is renovated, we will be able to put the classrooms that are there in South Brookline into the Baker School and be able to get rid of that lease also. So that's sort of does that help, Suzanne?
Yeah, it does, helps. It helps a lot, Helen. So
Okay.
you're saying that 29 and 30 you still have to be determined, I guess.
Right.
But it could be, they could be, if we
One
don't
or
need
both, well, probably
Right.
one only, but
the Beacon Street, yeah.
yes. Yes.
So
The
that would be-
reason FY30 is TBA is because one of the leases ends in FY29, so we don't have a dollar amount for that FY30 for that one lease.
And also, I think all of these leases are now on a yearly basis, or we have the opportunity to let them know if we're not going to continue on a yearly basis. So we
Right, so
managed to put that into the new
And
leases.
from what I recall, that would be November. You have to give notification for the next year,
Correct,
something like that.
correct. Okay, Charlie, you've been very
Thanks.
patient. Do you want to?
If I just want to briefly mention on the classroom capacity, and we talked about this, I guess, a couple of meetings ago. There is money set aside to move people out of 2 Clark Road under classroom capacity. And potentially, obviously, you can pay to move it, but potentially we might be able to use some of that money at Baldwin or wherever else.
Mhm,
need.
right,
So,
okay.
anyway, getting down to the building department. So these are accounts that fall into the school department as it's written in the book, but it's being used between town and school buildings. And I use it for a number of different things related to buildings. So HVAC equipment, this is the monies that I've been asking for to upgrade. Primarily, it's air conditioning and ventilators that are 20, 25 years old. And it's time to start changing them out. I've been pulling back. I put the brakes on it a little bit because it also included upgrades to boilers and condensing boilers and so on, because this had gone out many years. But I don't think there's an appetite for putting in new boilers when we're going on all electric. So I'd like to reconsider that and reprioritize. With Pierce ending and eventually Driscoll coming online, and we have some work at fire stations. I just want to rethink that whole project going on at least 10 years. So that's why I'm still working on that. The underground oil tanks are long-range plan to stop pulling them out. We don't really use oil anymore. And at some point, at some day, we're going to have to remove them out of the ground because they are a liability. They're double wall. They're all within the last 20 or 30 years, but if one should leak, it'll be a lot more than $60,000. $60,000 is for 2 oil tanks I have been getting them.
Move.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So last 2 years ago, we used the monies to remove the oil tank at the Lawrence School. And we removed the oil tank behind the main library. Partly because we needed to remove the oil tank, but partly because it was sitting right in the middle of where all the construction would be for Pierce. And they had a price of, I don't know, $250,000 to remove the oil tank, which I can get it done for a fraction of the cost. So that's been removed so they can just, plan and get that out of the way. So it's basically the older buildings with the older oil tanks that I'm replacing. I unfortunately don't have that list in front of me right now. It's mixed between town and school buildings.
I did, Charlie, when you sent them over, I did take a rough dollar amount of the future years, and I put that, as you can see, in the notes column for the ones where you had broken it down by project, because I thought it would be of interest.
Yeah.
One of the things we've talked about in the past is what the split is. So I did put it in by dollar where that was available.
Thank you.
Sure.
ADA renovations goes back 30 years. These are the monies I use to modify the buildings. Now, all the buildings are built to code. The code changes as new buildings are built, and we try to make the buildings more accessible, I guess, frankly. New door closers, automatic sensors and so on, to make the buildings easy to use, more accessible and so on. I usually get funded. I have been getting this funded every single year, so it's a good thing. And I'm going to request again. Town hall elevators. These are the same thing as the oil tanks, but I need to upgrade the elevators. Some of them are pushing. Well, they're very, very old. So we
Weren't
did
they
the
upgraded in the town hall renovation?
town
He
hall
said town
renovations
hall.
were
He
done.
said town hall, but that was, I think you just misspeaking, Charlie. Town
Okay.
school as opposed to town
Town
hall.
school, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Over the summer, we did one of the elevators at the Baker School, and we're working on the second one now in the 1950 wing, and it should be done in a few weeks. The next one is the $100,000 is a wheelchair lift, frankly. It's behind the auditorium on the left-hand side, and it is about 20, 25 years old. So I've been taking the older buildings and just putting it in long range, unless there was something that I bumped up the senior center because it was failing so much, because they use it all the time. So, and luckily we got all of the existing elevators upgraded and modernized, along with brand new elevators at the high school. So the high school is completely done. Next item is energy conservation. Again, I need to work with my assistant Cam on that. Going in different directions, looking at getting rid of fossil fuels and not doing boiler work as much anymore. And that also applies a little bit to energy management system. I think I'm going to just pump on the brakes a little bit. We have a brand new Driscoll. We'll have something at Pierce. The systems are getting incredibly large, very, very complex. And what we're running into now is that the wiring can't handle all the new equipment. Like at the high school, there's just too much data going back and forth. So I'm going to look at more infrastructure. I've been what's called an engine is actually like a little miniature server. I've been replacing them all with advanced equipment, which is great, but I still have communication issues. So we've been doing a little bit of rewiring. So I want to just look at overall where we're going with that. We still use Johnson. We will continue to use Johnson. Johnson is at the Driscoll School, so all good. But I want to stay on top of this. And basically, they're all computers that, just like your PC needs to be replaced, this is what they do, the same thing to Johnson. So, town building, envelope, windows, and schools. So as you know, we've had some people leave the building department. And the roof program, when I first started it, it actually officially ends in about 3 years. It was about a 20-year program. So I wanted to reassess where we are and where we had been and where we're going. So I redid the whole program over the winter and into the spring, and I've been meeting with staff. And I've come up with a new list, a new prioritized list that I feel comfortable about. I worked with Ray actually very recently, doing the same thing on envelopes. And we have some existing monies already budgeted. And I think that we need to look at that as well. A lot of money for envelope, though. It is extremely expensive, and it does go out 30 years. Envelope is like repointing an entire building. The last one we did was the primary, Pierce Primary. The entire building was repointed, which it needed. It's very, very old. So I'll probably be having a lot of talks with the 6th floor on masonry anyway, because it is quite a large piece of equipment. I mean, a large price. Public
Are
buildings.
there, just so that we're aware, are there school buildings that still need repointing, or are we up to date on that?
No, we have school buildings, and if you look, I have all the details, but if you look out in future years, Baker's on it, as a matter of fact.
Well,
Ray did some minor work on some of the sections in the back that has these white sort of plaster panels under the windows, but that's been about it.
mhm.
It does need, especially the 36 and 38 wing does need a lot of work. And it's budgeted.
Helen, the dollars you see here, my note over on the side, when I looked at the projects, it's about 80% PSB projects in that 14.6
Thank you.
million.
But the Baker one could be part of the Baker project.
If it did occur, it would be more likely rolled in with the Baker project.
Right.
That's exactly what we did everywhere else. So
Yeah,
I can
exactly.
wait and, we move things around a little bit and I could make some temporary repairs
Mhm.
if it needed to.
Okay,
Public building fire alarm. So this started many, many years ago and it
You
involved,
skipped roof. Do you want to talk about roof or no?
I sort of combined roofs.
Oh, you
with,
combined them. Okay, sorry.
envelope, but I started replacing the fire alarm panels. They're all basically computers. I've completed that. Now I'm working on other equipment that's related to fire alarm, sprinklers, fire doors. If a building gets renovated or is new, everything's brought up to code. But if we don't do any work and a building's sitting around for 20 years, 25 years, I have problems getting parts. And we really need to stay on top of the fire alarm systems indoors and everything related to it. So these are the monies I've been using to do that. Town building and school, security, life safety. This should be actually called security. The name's changed over the years, but these are the monies I use for cameras and key cards and all that related stuff that goes for security on town and school buildings. Hasn't been fully funded in all these years. The actual amount gets cut, but I ask for whatever I can, and I usually get most of it, but not all of it. And the very last thing is compactors. So the compactors last about 10 years, and we replaced all the school compactors working with the DPW, I'm going to say about 4 years ago. And Pierce and Driscoll will get brand new compactors as far as their projects are concerned, and new compactors were purchased for the high school. So for the schools, you're in very good shape. Or sometimes.
a question, do the compactors last longer because we're doing composting in some of the schools, or is that not, doesn't matter?
They're made out of steel. They just, frankly, they just rot out.
Mhm. Okay,
And that is it for the combined school and town project list.
great. Are there any questions about this?
I have a question and a comment.
Sure.
My comment is just to say thank you, Charlie, for coming and talking to us about this in advance of submitting it. I think it's really helpful for school committee to hear what's on the docket and what's being planned and hear what the different things are, and being able to talk about things like IEP versus ADA, so we're all sort of on the same page. I think it's really helpful. And my question, yeah, thanks. And my question was, are you gonna, the 3 rows that are still pending, do you think you're gonna have them before school committee tomorrow, so we'll have this filled in, or do you think it's gonna take later on?
Later on, it'll probably
Okay.
be next week.
Okay.
But we don't vote that part anyways, right?
Well, we voted to endorse the other
Right.
departments, and I think we probably can anyway with the information we have. So
Okay.
yeah, I think that like there's enough information here to roll with it. But if it was there, that would be useful. But if it's not, I think it's okay.
Okay, so why don't we take a vote to recommend to the school committee the FY 25 to 30 CIP summary that you see here, with support for both DPW and buildings. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, Suzanne
Yes,
and Mariah,
Yes.
David,
Yes,
and I vote yes. So now we have new and old business, and actually there are 2 things, Charlie, as long as I have you here, that I don't know, some is new, some is old. I'm not sure where we could put it under either one. And you may not have answers for this today, but at some point we might want to hear about first the heating system, heating air conditioning system issues at Tappan Street. so that we can be knowledgeable when people ask us why there are problems there.
Sure.
And the second one having to do with the electrical service at Heath and the ability of that to carry the building. So, and either one, if it's, I'm springing this on you.
Sure.
So,
No, that's fine.
yeah, it can wait till the next time if you want to wait to.
No, I can give you an update. So the HVAC systems for 22 Tappan in the high school, the STEM wing, were supposed to be the same as the Ridley School. It's called a displacement system, but it also has a dehumidification part. The dehumidification removes the moisture from the air. It does not air condition the building truly, but there was a little bit of a byproduct that the air is a little cooler. And it feels a little better. And it's been very successful in other buildings. So that was supposed to be part of the design. It was put in, and we've been having problems with it, especially at the 22 Tappan building. We've attempted to try and resolve this with the architect and their engineer over almost 2 years. And there were some remedial steps that we did to try and make the equipment more efficient, try to get more out of it. And we did everything was recommended, working with a contractor and RFS, that would be the engineer record. And it didn't work. We still have issues. So we have contacted town council, the architect and the engineer have counsel. And there have been discussions on some kind of a settlement. The engineers did come up with a plan that they felt would correct the problem as it is right now, especially at 22 Tappan. It was checked by an engineering firm that we use, GGD, and I was willing, and we would be willing to do it. It would be about between $250,000 and $500,000 worth of work. The issue was that in order for this to proceed, they wanted us to sign a release before the work was done. We're not going to sign a release. The building commission is not going to sign a release. If the engineer feels that it's going to work, there should be no issue. It will work. If we sign the release and it doesn't work, we have no recourse. They're gone. And based on all my experience for this entire project, because there have been other MEP related issues, I don't have the confidence that we should sign a release. So we have been trying to get another firm. I've been in discussion to get another opinion, and the plan right now is to have an analysis done by a third party on what's there now, what should have been there, what the causes are. Maybe it's design, maybe it's installation by the contractor, or both, and to come up with a fix for it. And meantime, though, this was not going to happen before the summer, before the hot, humid weather. So I ended up putting in some temporary heat pumps in 8 classrooms that are fed by 2 different air handling units that the school department, Hal Mason, and the staff were having a lot of problems with. Very, very high temperatures, very, very high humidity. Just could not get it down. So the heat pumps have worked. I was able to get them in just before the summer got hot. And it does take the edge off. So we'll be fine for a little while. But we do need to get it fixed. The equipment needs to be functioning the way it's supposed to be functioning. So
Thank you.
the second is the Heath School. So the Heath School, if you recall, we were given specific monies to install air conditioning at certain buildings and schools. Not all that we were asking for, but a prioritized list was created, and it seemed to lean towards classrooms that are on the highest parts of the buildings, that are on the sun-facing side, just take the edge off. And we
Right.
did get that over a few years, and then it stopped. So one of the schools that was used on was the Heath School. And we did do some work on the B wing in the back, this section that's on the sun. And we did a second, a grouping of classrooms over there. We didn't get the money again for the next group, but we can't do any more work over there because frankly, we don't have any more power. The service for the building is original going back to the 60s. We did put some additions and remodeling, but we never increased the service. So we are unable to install more heat pumps now. The fix for that is having Eversource put in a new transformer, which is inside the building and near the boiler room, and upgrading the entire service. And once that's done, then we can pull a new feed and put a new panel in the B wing, and then we can start working again. So it has been on the mini CIP for a couple of years, and until that happens, we cannot do any more AC work.
And how much are we talking about for that?
It's about $250,000.
It's slotted for, it's in the list for FY25. It's one of the projects that's in that $2 million, $2+
So for
million.
next year.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. That's good to know. Okay.
And just so that you'll know, the I've been putting in air conditioning heat pumps in anyway. And where do I get the money for it? So I've been using energy conservation funds through a new program with Mass Save, where they will pay us $3,000 per ton, which is 12,000 BTUs, to install equipment that will be fossil free. So they're primarily being used for heat, and you can put them in such a way that if you use those pieces of equipment, you're allowed to use them up to 50 degrees outside air temperature. And when it's 50, then you're allowed to turn on the fossil fuel because the equipment wouldn't be big enough. So I've already been doing this for 10 years, and I know how to do it. And we took advantage of the program. I started with Baker, and I did some rooms in the kindergarten. We actually broke even, so it does work. You like it because there's a byproduct. It also makes the air conditioning, which is you're very happy about. So I've been chipping away at that. I did some more rooms at Baker, the high school, and this summer we did some work on the first floor at the New Lincoln. And New Lincoln was done several years ago on the third floor, about 8 rooms. Again, it was the hottest room. So I will continue to do that. We do get the rebate money back, and we could use those monies for Heath if that's the priority. So I just want to make sure that's out there.
Do we have a list of all of how many you've done? Or do you
Yeah,
know?
I can get that together.
Yeah, that would be helpful
Um,
just to take a look at that.
At the Heath is about 20 more classrooms to do. It's about half of it. Now, there's some rooms like the offices, the multipurpose room that were done years ago, but
Yeah, right.
it's to that scale. So
And the library too, if I remember correctly.
library, correct.
Mariah,
Thanks. My question is actually about this, and I meant to ask it earlier and I forgot. So I'm glad we're talking about it again. So as you mentioned, Charlie, it's coming out of the energy conservation, which is, just to confirm, that's a mix of town funds, but you're also basically churning it because you're getting some rebates back from the state. Is that right? So you're sort of like
Yes, exactly.
leveraging the funds from the town. Is that
Exactly.
accurate? Okay.
recycling.
Yeah.
If we can get all the money it costs to put it in, this could go on forever in theory. It isn't, frankly. I ran into some situations where we spend more money, we don't get as much money back. We get half the money back. That's good.
Yeah.
And hopefully I get funded for more money. Again, that's why if you recall, I'm rethinking how I'm doing energy conservation. So
Well, I guess my request would be, and as you said, you're rethinking it, but like just the same way you have a multi-year fenestration program, like understanding like what's been done and what's left to do and what the time limit is, because I think like this past week, everyone wants to know, well, why is my building hot? And understanding that we're in a climate change situation. And so, are we talking about, I won't say air conditioned building, but I'll say fully climate controlled buildings in 5 years, in 10 years? Like, what does that time span look like would be really helpful for us to understand too. Do you have a sense, like, is it 10 years? Is it 5 years at the current rate of funding?
it's probably closer to 10 years.
Okay.
We were on a pretty good roll in the beginning, but it just stalled. And then we went many years without doing anything. So
Stalled because the town wasn't giving you the money that you could use to leverage with the state.
yeah, well, actually we had a separate CIP account to pay for just the air conditioning because we weren't getting the rebates like we were getting now. And
Okay.
So,
we didn't.
Charlie, a question.
Yeah.
Once Tappan Street is fixed, those units that are there can be used in another building, correct?
They could, yeah, if I get it, hopefully get it done within the next year, they're practically brand new and it'd be fine.
Exactly.
So we could recycle 8 of them.
Uh-huh.
So, but yes, I can get that together. We know where the air conditioning is, and if there's, something major like a service, I can't really do anymore unless there's another funding source, so.
Yeah.
A
And you said
service
you
meaning
have
like the
that.
electrical
Electric
service, that's a
service,
precursor.
right.
But in addition to the Heath panel that we have for next year, I'm trying to remember, I don't remember any other major electrical upgrades that preclude this being done.
Oh, well,
Are there any others?
we talked about Baldwin. I have
Yeah,
to look
okay.
at, I have to
But
look
that
at
one we're
Baker
talking,
again.
yeah.
Baker's more or less the back of the 50 wing and the top floors. I didn't get as many complaints this year because we put in, I'm gonna say another 10 about a year and a half ago between the kindergartens and some upper rooms that the principal wanted. We put in tenant New Lincoln, so if you wanted to complete the second floor, it's another 10. And we do have the power, it's just we gotta figure out how to do that. I'd say there's another 10 rooms at Lawrence on the second floor. We did do the first and the third. Hal Mason gave me a list this summer of 27 rooms that he feels would be adequate, not doing the whole building, but, and then most on the third floor. I told him that I don't have that money and I can't. So he prioritized it and we got about 8 rooms done, which was great. Didn't do the whole third wing, but it did most of it. So we can keep chipping away at that. But all your new buildings will have this dehumidification system that hopefully will work properly. But as Helen knows, every single project on HVAC never, ever gets done correctly.
In the beginning.
Who does it?
Beginning. Eventually it does.
Eventually, it takes me a couple of years to fix all the problems and we get it working, but we never, ever get it to work right the first time. So Public Works, it's just the way
Right.
it is.
Okay, thank you. I
Oh, you're
appreciate
welcome.
it. That's very helpful, I think, for all of us to know.
Especially I think too, because it responds to like what staff have been asking about and their concerns too. So it's good to get
Yeah.
that plan so we can really show what the steps are that we're taking to make that happen.
Right.
We're all trying. I mean, it's not.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, we know that. We know that. And I know that you've been working on this for years. This is not just because of this summer, which was impossible, but
Yeah.
for years. And our new buildings are going to be in the shape that we would like them. So we'll have 4 buildings, hopefully, that will be totally ready. Okay, is there any other new or old business? I better say seeing none real quick so we can end early. There was a question from the attendees, but I think that went away. So maybe it was answered. And if you have a question, you can always call me. And thank you. One thing for the committee, Charlie, you don't have to, well, maybe you do. I'd like to change the date of this meeting to not coincide with the building commission. At one point, I thought it made sense, but it's just too many hours sitting and trying to do that. So I think what I'll do is ask Betsy. I'll work with Betsy. We'll look at some possible dates. One question is, do we want to try for a morning time as opposed to an afternoon time? We'll put out a few doodle poll, not a Google poll, a doodle poll, and see where we can come up with to have our next meeting. Okay.
Very good.
is it just our next meeting or our future meetings?
All the meetings.
All
Yeah,
the meetings,
I want to
okay.
have a consistent date, but not the second Tuesday of the month that we have planned. I'm sorry, Betsy, I'm doing this to you, but I realized this was not a smart move, especially
right.
if we have 2
No
more
problem.
hours of meetings coming up. Okay,
No problem.
great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.